Johnny Depp fails to overturn ruling in wife-beater libel case. Amber Heard says she's by no means surprised. In a written judgment handed down by the Court of Appeal in London on Thursday, Judges Lord Justice Underhill and Lord Justice Dingemans refused the actor's application for a fresh trial on the grounds that a second hearing was unlikely to produce a different outcome. Following a hearing last week, the Court of Appeal has refused permission to Johnny Depp to appeal against the dismissal of his claim for libel against Newsgroup newspapers and one of its journalists, the Lord Justices wrote in an official summary of their ruling. Johnny Depp has failed to overturn the ruling in his wife-beater libel case. The claim was based on a story in The Sun alleging that he had beaten his former wife, Amber Heard. After a 3-week trial in the High Court last year in which both Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard gave evidence, Mr. Justice Nicole found that the allegation was true, the summary continued. The court in its judgment emphasized that an appeal against the decision of a trial judge on questions of disputed fact faced serious difficulties of its judgment, and that none of the criticisms of the judge's reasoning or conclusion advanced on behalf of Mr. Depp had a real prospect of success. The court added that the 2020 trial was full and fair and the judge involved, Mr. Justice Nicole, had given thorough reasons for his conclusions. After the court's ruling was made, a spokesperson for Heard said in a statement to Yahoo Entertainment, "We are pleased but by no means surprised by the court's denial of Mr. Depp's application for appeal. The evidence presented in the UK case was overwhelming and undeniable. To reiterate, the original verdict was that Mr. Depp committed domestic violence against Amber on no fewer than 12 occasions, and she was left in fear of her life. The verdict and lengthy, well-reasoned judgment, including the confidential judgment, have been affirmed. Mr. Depp's claim of new and important evidence was nothing more than a press strategy and has been soundly rejected by the court." Thursday's ruling closes the door on the Pirates of the Caribbean actor's legal action against the Sun newspaper for labeling him as a wife-beater in a 2018 article. Last week, Depp argued that the original trial ruling should be overturned on the basis that Amber Heard's pledge to donate her $7 million divorce settlement to charity was a calculated and manipulative lie that subliminally influenced Justice Nicole. They backed this assertion up with new evidence they say shows the actress has donated a total of $550,000 to the ACLU and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles since the couple's 2016 divorce. It was, they claimed, far removed from the $3.5 million the court was led to believe each organization would receive. In reply, Heard's legal team stated that she has done nothing dishonest with her donations to both charities and that she pledged to pay over 10 years, something they added was understood by the ACLU. To support this, Heard's attorneys provided their own evidence, which they say showed that the Aquaman star has, in fact, gifted a total of $950,000 to the ACLU and $850,000 to the Children's Hospital through anonymous donors. "She has pledged this amount," said Wolanski. "She is a donor." On Thursday, the Court of Appeal ruled that it could not make a ruling about whether Heard's statements were misleading. It added that Depp's legal team should also have raised the question of whether Heard's pledge was a calculated and manipulative lie during the original trial. Ms. Heard was not asked anything about her donation to charity in the course of cross-examination, the court wrote in its formal judgment. The question was never put to the test because she was never asked. In reply to the court's decision, lawyers for The Sun said the judge's ruling fully vindicates the newspaper's journalism and also Amber Heard, who stood up to Mr. Depp in the face of his repeated attempts to silence her. "It's a victory for the freedom of the press and for victims of domestic violence everywhere," added The Sun's attorney Jeffrey Smeal in a written statement to People. In a case wildly labeled as the libel trial of the century, the court heard evidence from over 30 witnesses and reviewed more than a dozen files of evidence. The Court of Appeal has now turned down any form of additional appeal. For our clients, this will thankfully, finally, bring this matter to a close. Mr. Depp's claim of new important evidence was nothing more than a press strategy and has been soundly rejected by the court. While Thursday's ruling signals the end of Depp's legal case in the UK courts, the actor is still fighting a $50 million defamation lawsuit against Heard in the US, which is scheduled to begin on May 3rd in Fairfax County, Virginia. Speaking on behalf of Depp, Joelle Rich from Schillings Partners in London stated that the Hollywood star was still prepared to pursue the American strand of his legal action against his ex-wife. The evidence presented at last week's hearing further demonstrates that there are clear and objective reasons to seriously question the decision reached in the UK court, wrote Rich in a statement provided to People. Mr. Depp looks forward to presenting the complete, irrefutable evidence of the truth in the US libel case against Ms. Heard, where she will have to provide full disclosure. The actor asked the Court of Appeal to grant permission for him to challenge the ruling, with the aim of having its findings overturned and a retrial ordered. However, following a hearing last week, on Thursday the court refused Depp permission to appeal. Lord Justice Underhill and Lord Justice Dingemans emphasized that an appeal against the trial judge's decision on questions of disputed fact faced serious difficulties. Part of Depp's argument relied on further evidence that Heard had not yet given away most of the $7 million she received in her divorce settlement, which she had said she was donating to charity. At last week's hearing, Depp's barrister, Andrew Caldecott QC, said the claim was a calculated and manipulative lie which gave Heard a considerable boost to her credibility as a person, and tipped the scales against Mr. Depp from the very beginning. But Lord Justice Underhill said, "We do not accept that there is any ground for believing that the judge may have been influenced by any such general perception as Mr. Caldecott relies on." In the first place, he does not refer to her charitable donation at all in the context of his central findings. On the contrary, he only mentions it in a very particular context, and after he had already reached his conclusions in relation to the 14 incidents. Underhill concluded his ruling by saying, "We refuse Mr. Depp's application to admit further evidence in support of his proposed appeal, and we conclude that the appeal has no real prospect of success and that there is no other compelling reason for it to be heard. We accordingly refuse permission to appeal." Partners said the evidence presented at last week's hearing further demonstrates that there are clear and objective reasons to seriously question the decision reached in the UK court. She said Depp looked forward to presenting the complete, irrefutable evidence of the truth in the US libel case against Heard, where she will have to provide full disclosure. A spokesperson for Heard said, "We are pleased, but by no means surprised, by the court's denial of Mr. Depp's application for an appeal. The evidence presented in the UK case was overwhelming and undeniable." To reiterate, the original verdict was that Mr. Depp committed domestic violence against Amber on no fewer than 12 occasions, and she was left in fear for her life. The verdict and lengthy, well-reasoned judgment, including the confidential judgment, have been affirmed. Mr. Depp's claim of new and important evidence was nothing more than a press strategy and has been soundly rejected by the court. A spokesperson for The Sun said, "The Sun had every confidence that this leave to appeal application would not be granted and are pleased with today's decision. The case had a full, fair, and proper hearing, and today's decision vindicates the courageous evidence that Amber Heard gave to the court about domestic abuse. Despite repeated attempts to undermine and silence her by the perpetrator, The Sun will continue to stand up and campaign for victims of domestic abuse."